Thank you for inviting me. So if your physician gave you a prescription that would improve your memory, decrease your depression, reduce your symptoms of multiple sclerosis, or reduce your risk of Parkinson's disease, would you take it?
Sure.
Now, if I told you that this isn't a ergogenic aid, it's not a special diet, it's not a surgery, it's not an implantable device, it's not a vitamin or mineral, are you still interested?
Sure.
So the exciting thing about this treatment is that it's simply exercise. Good old-fashioned breaking a sweat or pumping iron. Now would you take it? So the human brain is an amazing organ. It's made up of about 80 billion neurons with about 100 trillion connections. Now disruptions in any of these connections can cause brain diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or depression. What we do know is that although scientists believe that they used to believe that the brain was fully developed after you were finished with development in childhood. They thought that you basically had the same neurons and that your neurons couldn't change through 18th into adulthood. But what we now know is that we know that the brain has an amazing capacity to rewire and repair itself, even in adulthood. And that's a process called neuroplasticity. So we know that the brain can do this, but the key to helping the brain do this is to find that right treatment. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that I'm interested in. Now what we do know is that we know that with this amazing capacity that the brain can change itself, and we know specifically most of this work started with a lot of the stroke literature. So in individuals who have had a stroke, we know that early rehabilitation therapy can really help them restore function and also potentially rewire the brain in the absence of the neurons that are damaged. And this process is really called neuroplasticity. Okay, so we know that the brain has capacity to change through this neuroplastic process. And there's a large body of literature that gets larger pretty much every minute, looking at really how exercise can induce neuroplasticity in these injured brains. And there are many potential mechanisms for this. I really like this diagram. It was made by Giselle Petzinger, who's at USC, and she really kind of focused on what could potentially be the mechanisms for this exercise-induced neuroplasticity. And what she proposed is that not all exercise is created equally, and I'll show you a little bit of evidence for that today. But exercise really needs to have kind of two major components. It needs to have the aerobic component, where you increase your heart rate, you're getting increased blood flow. That increased blood flow, increases blood flow in the brain, and then you could potentially have a whole cascade of events occurring, which are kind of outlined on the right side there. Okay, in addition, she proposed that you really need to have some sort of goal-based component to this exercise. And this is really based on a lot of the stroke work. Okay, so you need to have some sort of goal, some sort of skill practice that's a part of that exercise to promote these exercise-enhanced neuroplasticity. So the focus of my research is really to look at kind of what is an optimal exercise therapy to promote neuroplasticity in Parkinson's disease specifically. And as Doug mentioned, we have done work in MS with psychology department, Dr. Spitznagel. I've also done work with CASE, looking at Parkinson's and depression and exercise that can help with that. But really the primary focus for the last 15 years or so in my research has been Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's is a progressive neurological disorder, and it really occurs when some neurons in the midbrain stop producing an important chemical called dopamine. And dopamine really allows neurons of the nervous system to talk to each other specifically to produce movement. And when these neurons die for unknown reasons, what you get is you actually get a disruption of the important circuits that produce movement, and the disruption of those circuits create the symptoms that you see that are characteristic of Parkinson's. So most of you have probably seen them. There's usually a tremor, It usually manifests itself in the hands. They have slowness of movement or bradykinesia, which makes it difficult for them to do everyday tasks. It also slows their walking. They have rigidity in the joints mostly, which causes resistance to movement, which makes it difficult for them to move. And then very often they have gait and balance issues, okay, which makes it difficult for them to get around and also increases their risk of falling. Okay. So what we do know is that with loss of these dopaminergic neurons, that you basically have these symptoms. And so the goal of a lot of the work I've done is to try to look at how we can initiate that exercise-induced neuroplasticity in the Parkinson's brain. So the first set of studies that we did, actually I did as a postdoc. I'm also a cyclist, so I love to ride my bike. I love to ride my bike fast. And so when I started to do this work at the clinic, the PI, who was Dr. Alberts, he was a cyclist as well, and he said, you know, I really want to focus on this theory that I have about cycling cadence and inducing neuroplasticity in the Parkinson's brain. So I was the perfect person to do that since I was a cyclist. So we actually brought a tandem bike into the lab, and me specifically, because I was the trainer who did most of these people, my goal was to make sure that these people would pedal at a fast cadence. Okay. So you may ask what a fast cadence is. Hey, most cyclists kind of focus on an 80 to 90 revolution per minute cadence. It's most efficient. So when we train to do that. So my goal as the trainer was to make sure when we were on this bike that the people had 80 RPM cadence. So we did do that. This is just one sample of the data. It was an 8-week study. We trained them for 3 times a week. And what you'll see is that the blue line is the group that did the high cadence. We called it forced cycling. Sounds horrible. We forced them to cycle. But that was the high cadence. And then we had another group that actually did a self-selected cadence. We didn't tell them how fast to pedal. They ended up pedaling about 60 revolutions per minute. And what you'll see is that this is a clinical scale for Parkinson's. The lower the score, the less the symptoms. So you'll see if you look at the blue line, EOT represents the time after that 8-week intervention. And you'll see that there is a noticeable decrease in the symptoms in that group. And then the EOT plus 4 was 4 weeks after they finished the intervention. So I think I can convince everybody that the group who did the high cadence cycling improved, and then the group that did self-selected cycling stayed pretty much the same. Okay. So what's the take home from this? Not all exercise is created equally. Okay, what we also did was we did a study to look at brain blood flow using functional MRI. And these are some samples from that paper. Okay, in this one, we actually only did one high cadence cycling exercise training session with them, just a single session. And we had them come back in 3 different scenarios. So we had them come in off medication, and we did the functional MRI. Then we had them come in on the very right top. We had them come in on medication. Then we did the fMRI. And then we had them come in off medication. But we had 1 session of the high cadence cycling, which is the bottom right there, post-exercise. Okay, so if you focus on the area here, okay, this is the basal ganglia area. What you can see is if you focus on the right graph that no medication after high cadence cycling is fairly similar to the on-medicated state. Okay, this is a sample of, I believe, 25 or so people. And what you also see is if you look at the graph in the middle, that clinical score, again, the lower the score, the better. You'll see a similar trend in that. Okay, the off medication, the scores were higher, which is what you would expect. On medication, their scores were lower. And then the off medication after the high cadence cycling, the scores were pretty similar to the on med condition. This was really exciting. It was really great work. But the problem with it was very challenging for the trainer. Okay? I trained most of them. I ended up doing about 75% of the work during those training sessions. And I can tell you, it was extremely challenging. There were some times I thought I couldn't do it. So when I got here to Kent State, we wanted to take this to the next level and make it kind of easier for larger groups of people to do. So in collaboration with engineers at Case and Rockwell, we actually took the paradigm of the tandem bike and we replaced the human trainer with a computer and a motor. And in doing that, we were able to actually use the motor to drive the cadence. You didn't need a trainer, so I didn't have to spend all my time in spandex shorts as a sweaty mess. And I was able to train these people at the appropriate cadence using that device. Okay, so here's a picture of it on the left. Anybody who ever wants to come see it, it's over in the Mac Annex. I have 2 of them. Okay, we call them the dynamic cycles. Okay, we do that because we really tried to model the push-pull that was present in the tandem cycling when 2 people were on the bike at the same time. You can set a cadence, but it fluctuates around that set cadence just like you would see if you were on a bike with somebody else. We had them come in for 3 sessions in this particular study, and then we looked again at that clinical score that I showed you before. So the dynamic group, we set the motor at 80 revolutions per minute. We put them on the bike, let them go crazy. And then in the static group, we actually, again, just like what I already told you, we had them on the bike, but we didn't turn on the motor, and we didn't tell them to pedal a specific cadence. What they ended up doing is about 66 revolutions per minute, okay? Because that was what they chose. And again, you'll see if you look at the pre versus the post, the static pretty much stayed the same. The dynamic showed a significant improvement. Okay, the dynamic group just happened to be worse. Everybody looks at this and says, why did that happen? It was totally a random scenario. Okay, but nevertheless, after only 3 sessions, we showed that we got an improvement in the clinical score. Okay, so that was really great. We were really excited about it. But let me go back just briefly. If you look at those error bars, okay, those of you who are into statistics and math would say, wow, those are big error bars. Okay, and yes, they are. And that's characteristic of working with clinical populations. Okay, they're all varied as far as their symptoms. They're not all the same. So what we next wanted to do, and the work we're doing right now, is to try to focus on how can we make the exercise individualized per person, because not everybody's the same, and also how can we make it adaptive. Okay, because Parkinson's is progressive, it changes over time, we need to change the treatment over time. Right? So the work that we're doing right now is to design what I call a smart bike, okay? An adaptive algorithm. So if we can take data, build a model where we can project what a specific person would need based on where they're starting, okay, and where their target as far as their symptoms need to be. So this is just a diagram of how we're planning on doing that. Okay, so basically if we know where their clinical scores are now and we have a target, we can predict based on this model what kind of exercise they would need to get them to that target point. Okay. So the idea behind this is that we could basically have individualized information for each person, and we could adapt it within an individual and over time to promote that neuroplasticity. Okay. So you may not like to exercise because it makes you sweaty, it makes you tired, it makes you sore. Okay, but I hope I've convinced you today that exercise is indeed medicine for the brain. Okay, so I encourage you to take that prescription and get moving, because your brain will thank you. And I thank you.